The Rivian R2 is less than 7 months away from the start of production, and I would be a fool if I didn't make an R2 update video with all of the interesting videos, pictures, and information we've gotten about the Rivian R2. Starting with this slew of R2 images coming directly from Rivian themselves. Rivian posted a picture of a pack of R2s out in the wild, driving on US roads and kind of showing us that they are testing them out. Now, this is not the first time that we've seen R2 on the road. People have already spotted R2 on the road, and Rivian has commented on Twitter mentioning it, and they know that we are watching. And in fact, about a week ago, I was actually sent a couple images of a Rivian R2 charging at a Tesla supercharger. Shout out Chris, link in the description for those pictures. Of course, follow me on Instagram if you haven't already. I post all of the coolest stuff, particularly on my story. I'm pretty funny, I think. But charging at a Tesla supercharger with the charge port in, of course, the correct place. It was already confirmed months ago at this point that Rivian moved the charge port to the driver's side rear, which is the correct orientation to fit Tesla's version 3 Tesla supercharger sites. Majority of the Tesla superchargers in the United States are version 3, North America are version 3. Of course, Tesla is rolling out their version 4 stalls, dispensers, but it's going to be some time. And so if you want to ensure that people who are buying your vehicle, the Rivian R2, have great, easy, accessible infrastructure, well, I think it's best that they move the charge port. And that was a big complaint. For the first week of the R2 unveil, that was a huge complaint. Why is the charge port on the opposite side? Anyway, yes, an R2 was spotted charging at a Tesla supercharger with native NACS J3400. That made me super happy and excited to see. And while I was editing this video, Rivian CEO RJ dropped an image of an R2 towing in front of another R2, which is super cool. In fact, about a week ago, we saw that Rivian was tow testing a Kia EV9. It had Rivian's U.S. Department of Transportation numbers on it. We knew it was Rivian testing, and then we saw the same EV9 next to a pack of R2s. And so clearly, Rivian is in that kind of tow phase. I wonder what the tow rating is going to be. We know that Rivian originally was working on some sort of proprietary towing thing, which I think they're going to get rid of. It's just going to be a regular tow hitch. But this is exciting. More R2 testing. Anyway, the R2 pictures that Rivian posted on their Instagram are absolutely stunning. And particularly, we see 4 Rivian R2s. And I think the craziest part here is the caption. They may not always travel in packs, but sightings of R2 are on the rise as hundreds, of production intent builds roll off our pilot line and hit the road for real world testing and validation. Hundreds. Crazy. Hundreds of these R2s will be on the road testing, getting a bunch of data, vehicle telematics, all of those sensors and fun stuff that give Rivian the data to know what they need to change, what they need to tune, to ensure that when production starts in the first half of 2026, that they have a well-built vehicle. And I think it is exciting. Now, the biggest thing that stood out to me and something that was expected is this picture here of these 4 R2s side by side. Now, these first R2s we see on the left here, you zoom in, you see the one on the farmost left has a light colored white interior, and the second one from the left, right next to it, has a black dark interior. And I think that just gives us more of a confirmation of how simple some of the options for R2 will be. I am expecting Rivian to offer a lot more options than what you would see like Tesla, where there's 2 interior options, 5 color options. I think R2 is going to be a lot different. There are going to be more options when it comes to the exterior, interior, and wheels. However, for our more standard trims, particularly the rear-wheel drive and the dual motor trims, I think it's going to be pretty simple, exactly how we see it with the R1 dual vehicles. There is a white interior and a black interior, and that is pretty much it. I imagine we will see a premium interior for R2, likely for the Tri, or if there is some other higher end variant of R2, kind of like how the Tri and quad motor variants of the R1 vehicles have the Ascend interiors with slate sky and these fancy woods and fancy leathers and premium stitching. I imagine we're going to see something similar to that in R2. But again, your basic R2 is going to have a black interior or white interior. Most disappointed with the fact that that white interior does have a light colored headliner. I do like a dark colored headliner, but that's how it currently is with Rivians and a lot of other vehicles. You get the light color, you get the light colored headliner, light color interior. You get the dark black one, you get the black colored headliner and interior. Other than that, these pictures just give us a better look at what we've already known R2 to be. A mid-sized, boxier SUV set to compete with the Model Y and the Mach-E and the Ioniq 5 and the ID4, which those are a little bit on the lower end, but particularly the Model Y. This is Rivian's Model Y moment, and I emphasize this because the R1S is a top-selling vehicle, particularly in California and the state of Washington and other areas across the United States. The R1S is the best-selling vehicle above $70,000, or the best-selling three-row SUV or large SUV, depending on how different regions class their vehicles. And I think this just shows that there is high demand for other options besides Tesla. Tesla makes great vehicles. The Model Y is the best, one of the best selling vehicles on this planet for a reason. And if you give people more options, you are going to see more people buy electric vehicles, which is what we want. And you're going to see more people buy Rivians, which is what we want. We don't really want to take away from Model Y owners. You want to take away those 4Runner RAV4 owners, those Subaru Forester owners, those people who have gas-powered vehicles. You want to turn them into electric owners. But for sure, yeah, we're going to get a lot of Model Y owners switching over to the R2, which is going to be exciting. And while we do have a lot of EV SUV options, of course, you have GM with the Blazer and the Equinox, and Ford with the Mach-E, and you have the ID4, and Audi and Porsche, and Hyundai Kia have their own selection. There are a lot of EV midsize SUVs, and of course, the Model Y dominates it all. And for good reason. It has the infrastructure, it has the ecosystem, it has the software, it has the efficiency, and this is what is important. Because while there are other EV SUV options, there are not many that are compelling, that offer a full package that can be seen as worth it to customers. And so this is why you see the Model 3 and the Model Y sell so much. And then while options like the Ioniq 5 and the Mach-E are objectively very good EVs, they are just lacking in some parts. And so the goal is to create a vehicle that is on the same level as the Model Y in terms of what is being offered to the customer, and just in a different form factor, a boxier, more rugged vehicle. And because the R1S shows so much demand, I think it's clear that the R2 will show a lot of demand as well. And so I'm very looking forward to seeing the R2 within the next 7 months. But my lease for my R1T ends at the very end of the first half of 2026, May 30th. And so the way the lease works, I believe I can keep it for a couple months after. But the goal is I want to get out of my R1T and jump right into an R2. That's what I'm looking forward to. Now, I'm curious to know what you guys think the ramp will look like for R2, and this kind of leads into the next topic in conversation: Rivian's logistics factory and general assembly in Normal, Illinois. Also, the Georgia factory, which I'll kind of talk about. Of course, you can watch my last video. I visited the Georgia factory. That was, there's no factory there. It's just red clay. But I visited where the site will be built in the future, and it was really fun to see where the future of Rivian will be. But I visited Normal, Illinois in July, and Rivian already had the R2 exteriors of the R2 General Assembly, as well as their logistics supplier park, and the exteriors are done. Now it's just working on the interiors, wiring, I imagine plumbing, right? Actually installing the tooling to get R2 ready. And as Rivian mentioned, sightings of R2 are on the rise as hundreds of production intent builds roll off our pilot line and hit the road for real world testing and final validation. So we know Rivian has a pilot production line in Irvine, California, where Rivian's West Coast headquarters are. Of course, how many headquarters does Rivian have, right? They have Irvine, they have Palo Alto, they got the place coming in Atlanta, and they also have Plymouth, so 4. But their Irvine headquarters, they have a pilot line for R2 where they're building them and then testing them. I think what they mean by this is maybe, just maybe, speculating here, that they are already getting ready to start pilot production in Normal, Illinois. And that's when we will actually see hundreds, and they'll probably build, if not 1,000, of these R2s, just test vehicles. And of course, in the end, many of them will be destroyed. But vehicles that will go to third-party partners, suppliers, that will go to regulatory channels, right? The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, if they need to do some sort of testing, whatever that may be, they will go out and they will be testing how they build the vehicles, understand the vehicles a little better. And it's insane that so many of these will be coming out of Normal, Illinois. And then, of course, subsequently, they'll be coming out of Georgia in like 2028. And I forgot to mention Rivian's Normal, Illinois factory is currently paused for production as they integrate the R2 general assembly line, which means pilot production of the R2 in Normal, Illinois is a lot closer than you may think. There are many parts that the R2 of General Assembly, R2 and R1 will share, like the paint shop, as well as Rivian will be producing the Maximus drive unit. That's the drive unit that's going to be used for the tri-dual and rear-wheel drive versions of the R2. And so, well, they gotta integrate all of this. They gotta put together all of the tooling. And so currently the factory is paused. As of like mid-September to late September, early October, no R1s or RCVs are being made. But the biggest part here is my friend Zach, who lives in Normal, Illinois, got these awesome drone shots of the tunnel that's being built on Rivian motorway. And so as I mentioned, right, Rivian is building the R2 General Assembly, but across the street, across from this 4-lane road, they're building a supplier park. And in the supplier park, Rivian will be able to accept deliveries, ship out, parts for R2, but particularly be a place for some of their partners to, I guess, actually manufacture parts in Normal, Illinois. But it's Rivian's building, but it's a third-party manufacturer. And so not sure why Rivian doesn't just do it themselves. I feel like this is where I start to not understand what Rivian's doing when it comes to vertical integration, right? If you're building a supplier park, you're building this giant facility for you to be able to make things, why would you pay another company to make it for you? Why not just learn to make it yourself and that you don't have to pay someone to make it for you on your own property? That doesn't really make sense to me, but that seems like what the supplier park is going to be. Anyway, these suppliers will be making parts, and right across the street, well, is where R2 will be made. And so because there is a 4-lane road in between the supplier park and R2 General Assembly, well, they got to be able to ship things between the two. And so they're building a tunnel, pretty much an underpass, underneath the 4-lane road in front of Rivian motorway, where they'll be able to deliver stuff from the logistics center, where things will be delivered and built and made, take them to R2 General Assembly to assemble an R2 for it to then be delivered to you. And I think this image, right, it's just an underpass and a tunnel, right? Nothing crazy. Oh, it's a tunnel. But for things like this, it just signifies how much work is going into this, and that very soon we will see the R2 come off the line in Normal, Illinois. When I was there, they were currently working on this tunnel. This was July, late July. They were digging all of this out, but the road was blocked off, and so, you couldn't pass here. Yeah, R2 is around the corner. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think, particularly how many units of R2 do you think we will see produced in the first year of R2 production, particularly full year 2026. So by the end of 2026, how many R2 do you think we will see built? And I wonder how much this is going to affect R1 production. Will we see R1 production take a hit because R2 production is scaling? I don't exactly have an idea of the math, that my guesstimation of how many R2s will be built in the full year 2026. But we do know, right, as I've mentioned in previous videos, there will be 3 shifts. That's 8 hours per shift, which that's 24 hours in a day. And so by the end of 2027, Rivian says that they will have 3 shifts online. And that means R2 production's happening round the clock, baby. They're going. They're not stopping. R2's being made. There's no stopping. But when production happens in the first half of 2026, they will start with 1 shift, which is just 8 hours. And so they'll start with 1 shift and they'll make R2, scale it. By the end of 2026, we will see a second shift that is 16 hours. And so we will see how that kind of ramps up. I'm just hoping that I get my R2 delivery soon. That's really it. I just want R2. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to when it comes to R2. Expect more of these videos, just more of me talking to the camera. I gotta make more of these YouTube videos. That's what everyone keeps telling me to do. So we're doing that. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Isaiah. This is Rivian Updates, and I'll see you guys in the next one.